hot-button issues like the economy, healthcare, climate change, to local politics and international affairs. The Docket delivers engaging and thought-provoking discussions that will keep you informed and inspired. Tune in each and every Tuesday morning from 7 a.m. as Jeff Koinange and Nick Odiambo take you on a journey through the political landscape. The Docket.
That's right, The Docket. And this is his real name, folks. His real name is Fanya Mambo.
Fanya Mambo.
Kinuthia.
Yes, a very good morning to you.
Good morning. How you doing?
Kinuthia. I'm very well, thank you.
Karibu sana. Every time things go against this administration, the president takes off.
We've noted with great
concern.
Yes. That like Juicy, we had that whole situation where the court said no more housing levy, and now he's out.
Safari.
Wacha nitembe kidogo nitadili na hawa watu nikirudi, my friend. So I'm sure this week when he comes back.
Fanya Mambo, that was a shocker by the Court of Appeal, wasn't it?
I think this government has never understood. You know, they think we fight their programs, but that's not what we do. We fight for the sanctity of our incomes. So for us, we've always told them, it is not your programs we have a problem with. We have a problem with you planning for your programs with our salaries in mind. So if you were to plan without really planning for our salaries, I think things would be okay. The problem is, every time you think about something, you wait, hey, Jeff's salary, let's hire for 5,000. Then you decide you want to build houses. Jeff's salary, let's go for another 10,000. Then you decide, health is not adequate. His salary. So whose work is it? Whose salary is it? And that's why I've always told them, it is very easy. You take the salary, we take the taxes. It appears a better place to be.
But let me ask you, after the Court of Appeal, there's a Supreme Court.
Yes.
Would this go to the Supreme Court, or this is done and dusted?
If it's irregular, it's irregular. If it is wrong, it is wrong. I mean, taking wrongs to another level doesn't help in any way, in any shape or form. It is wrong.
Tell me something, Fanya Mambo. This is a president's pet project. Yes. He is so adamant that this thing has to pass. What does he do now?
Constitution is superior to his manifesto. And if Kenyans have to choose between his manifesto and our beloved 2010 Constitution, we will die fighting for the Constitution. And he needs to get to the point where he listens to Kenyans. And Kenyans are telling him housing is not our priority. We have 130,000 children who should have gone to Form 1 who haven't gone. And you're telling us about houses. So Kenyans have bigger problems. They have bigger problems that are more immediate. This is what he should be listening to, not what he wants us to do for this country.
The housing idea is also not a very bad idea. It's also the cost and how it's allocated to people, because I don't think any of us will qualify for a house to begin with.
They've just evicted 1,000 people in Taita Taveta from houses they've afforded so that they can build for them affordable
We
housing.
want to put in more affordable houses.
So it doesn't make sense you go to Kumari, you displace 23,000 families because you want to build for them affordable housing by destroying the houses they've already afforded. I've always told Kenyans, in 2023, the High Court pronounced itself, not you, not me, and said, Weston Hotel is on public land. The High Court. It's a High Court decision. You can find it everywhere. So if we are destroying whatever is on public land to build affordable housing, we know one example of something that the High Court has pronounced is on public land, and that decision is yet to be appealed. So as it stands now, we have a hotel on public land. Why don't you bring that one down first and build affordable housing there? Then we shall see a willingness and a desire from this government to build affordable housing on land that is public land.
Do you feel like taking one for the team and just going to the courts and saying this Weston Hotel is on public land? Can we have... we'll give you the filing fees if you want.
As we speak, that's most welcome. As we speak, I already have a case in court against this government on taxation, where we are saying, let's set a limit as to how much money a government can take from our pockets. We had filed under certificate of urgency. It's the first time I'm seeing a case filed under certificate of urgency that we filed in December around Christmas, being sent to a mentioned date in June, which we have appealed and made noise about. I am in court with them on the Haiti issue. So I already have a very heavy petition against this government, and I have no problem with having my name again as the main petitioner against this government on things that I feel are just an insult to who Kenyans are and what Kenyans want.
By the way, are we going to Haiti?
I wish we didn't have to. and I pray that we don't. And I have always explained myself and said that Kenya has become such a wonderful nation. We are so secure. You can speak on your phone on any street at midnight and nothing will happen. Our police have managed to contain the bandits in Baringo. Our police have done everything else they needed to do in this country.
Yeah.
The only thing that is remaining, by the way, in a country that should have a ratio of 1 policeman to every 495 citizens, according to the UN standards, and it has 1,200. But we still find it necessary to take 1,000 out of what we have to go to Haiti. It doesn't make sense. Try, pick up your phone even at 8 a.m. sometimes on some streets in Nairobi, and you see what those guys on the motorbike will do. We've not been able to contain our own problems here in terms of security. Why are we going to keep peace in another country?
Especially the country where they can't even speak. Do our police speak French?
Or Patois?
I was giving somebody the analogy. For anybody who came to Nairobi when they were adults, the first time you landed in Nairobi, when you found yourselves in Nairobi, you used to tell people we meet at Afia Center, or you had specific places where you had to meet so that you get your bearing. Now what you are doing is taking our standard policeman, the one we know on our roads, and placing him in a capital city in Haiti where he has never been. And then he's supposed to start fighting bandits from there. To start with, he's even geographically challenged. He has no idea where to start. Yeah. You know, imagine, mtu ameland hapa, I've always said bus station, for the first time Machakos, country bus. He's just come to Nairobi and he's told now there are bandits somewhere on Moi Avenue, go get them. Where does he even begin to know where Moi Avenue is? That's the situation you're putting our police in before we even get to. Look at the rifles we are carrying. 1945 war weapons, the G3. And look at what is happening with the Haiti rebels and the weapons they are carrying. And we are sending our men and women there. If you ask me, worst case scenario, if we love this country, there's a lot of money involved in the Haiti issue. Why don't they bring us plane loads of their young men? They bring us 10, 15, 20, 30 planes. We've been training the British Army in Laikipia. We have adequate training facilities for these people. We train their young people to go and deal with their own problems. They know the geography of their area. They know their language. The only thing they don't have is training. And what the United Nations should do, if they're really keen on Haiti, is to give us resources to train so that Kenya becomes a training hub. We will get a lot of money from those people coming here. And because we've had stories of some children who are now British citizens by somehow, because of what happens in Nanyuki, we'll also have some Haiti citizens, which is fine by extension. But let us have them coming here, we train them, and they go back. I think this is a high time we moved into Baringo and had a serious conversation with those bandits and told them actually there are people who are ready to deal with people like you. They are happy to exchange fire with you.
So we send bandits to...
We send bandits there because it's a bandit place. Bandit deal with bandit. And then we secure Baringo automatically.
That's good.
That's a wonderful idea.
Unajua kufanya mambo wewe.
Fanya mambo.
So then the president takes off once again. Remember he said he wasn't going to travel as much, number one. And then, first of all, single country invites. He said he wasn't going to do. Before you know it,
he's out.
Ako Italy.
You know, the president does us a big favor by staying in this country. If you look at what SRC has proposed for his job group, every time he goes to a place like Dubai, it's about $1 million in terms of stipends they get, in terms of allowances.
Per day?
Yes. Just look at the SRC. They have a circular, and I challenge every Kenyan to go and look at it. The president is doing us a favor because every time he stays here, he loses a lot of money. There's a lot of money he's paid for traveling. The amount of provisions that are made for a head of state every time he's out of this country, and people in that job group, and the people around him. If I was around him, I think I would advise him to stay in the air longer, because then the longer we are with him, the more money we make. So he's actually doing us a favor by being here. But I can tell you, no nation is going to be run on the aeroplane, and no nation is going to be run on the top of land cruisers. Someone has to sit at the office and do something. And this is where the nation is going wrong.
That's a good point. Good point. Let's switch gears here. It looks like, Kalonzo, who had declared that he's running in 2027 a few weeks ago, he's been isolated. Martha Karua is going her way. And, of course, Baba, the other day at a meeting, people were saying he's the candidate of choice, even though he said he will make that announcement when the time comes. What's going on in Azimio? Are there cracks?
Politicians follow interest. So there's nothing different happening in Azimio. It's just what you're seeing in Kenya Kwanza. Politicians have started discovering that my interest is different from that of the other person. And so what we are seeing is natural. As long as it's politicians trying to be put together, at some point they will leave everything and follow their interests. And that is what is happening. Every politician right now is following their personal interest. Yes.
Will Azimio last?
It doesn't have to last. If you asked me, I supported Azimio in the previous election. But we're at a point where Kenyans are saying, tunataka faces mpya, hatutaki hao watu tumekuwa tukiona, hatutaki hao wako kwa Azimio, hatutaki hao wako kwa Kenya Kwanza. We want new faces. And the Fanya Mambos of this country are presenting themselves as the new faces. We are saying that we are tired of always having a conversation about the same people. When I was in primary school, I spoke about some of these leaders.
Yeah.
You've gone all the way through university, graduated, you get your masters, and you're still discussing about the same politicians. Kenyans have gotten to a point where they're saying, we just want to see new faces. And this is the conversation we are having right now. It's not about the leaders in Azimio. It's not about the leaders in Kenya Kwanza. It's about the emerging young people who do not carry the baggage of tribal inclinations, the baggage of some corruption scandals, the baggage of Anglo leasing and Goldenberg. Young people who have fresh minds and who can do things differently.
The Kenyan electorate is so one-track minded that, you know, if this person stands, that's who they're going to go for. They don't want fresh faces right now. I haven't seen a fresh face in a very long time.
Our voters have a very high affinity for the wrong people. That's why somebody will vie in Nairobi who's done very well at the Nairobi Stock Exchange and a few other places and get 0 votes. And someone who has got no idea of how to run a keto dip becomes governor for Nairobi.
Yeah.
And you see the shenanigans that these people do. Voters' affinity for nonsense is very high. And this is what we are trying to do within these 3 years. Trying to show our voters that a time has come when you realize that the political offices is not a dustbin for all the things that are rejected. I was saying the other day, today if somebody wants a house help in their home, they usually say, nataka mtu ako na certificate ya form 4. Aweze kufanya homework na watoto wangu. But when they are looking for an MCA, birth certificate is enough. And this guy is going to discuss billions at the county. They are going to discuss health and so on and so forth. So we have to start telling our people and to be the agents of that conversation that you cannot be saying you want a house girl who has got a form 4 certificate so that she can do homework with their children, but for MCA, birth certificate is enough. 2010 was the last time we were supposed to speak about democracy. Once we got this constitution, we moved from the conversation about democracy to a new conversation, and the new conversation is about governance. Democracy will give you Salasia for MP. But now we have to move to the point where we are not just looking at democracy, where everybody has an equal chance at the ballot. We are looking at governance. Post-election, what do you get? And I can tell you the bulk of the leaders we have is because we fought for democracy. We have democracy. But democracy is not enough. Now we have to start thinking post-democracy, and that is governance. Why do we have so-and-so as a member of parliament? Why do we have some of these rogue people becoming even governors? Why do we have a cabinet secretary who has... I was challenging people when people were talking about export of labor. Kenyans who are listening to me today, I want you without Googling to tell me who is the CS for labor. Even in this studio, people are looking at who is the CS for labor.
I saw her the other day.
And when was the last time the CS for labor
made...
or
something?
Nobody is sure. And when was the last time the CS for labor said anything about labor export and Kenyans being...
In fact, it was in the paper today when they're saying that we don't have the prerequisite skills to go for this job
in Germany.
But Saudi Arabia, we have the skills.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia,
you know what I'm saying?
I have always told
Africa
people,
is our problem.
I have always told people, there's a politician telling you that you elected me so that I can get you jobs outside of this country. If those jobs are really good for Kenyans, why don't we start by giving those jobs to our cabinet secretary so that each of them gets a job outside of this country, because those jobs are really good. And then the Kenyans take those ones. And if even the president feels that it is good for Kenyans to go and work abroad, I want him to lead by example and become the president of one of those countries that he's sending us to. So that people can see that by example, these politicians are not only telling us that jobs abroad are good, they can also go and do them. Our ministers, let them go and become ministers there if they would qualify. So let's have a conversation. And I always tell people, you are being told that you are not qualified for some of those jobs in Germany. How many members of our cabinet qualify to do a driver's job in Germany? How many members of our cabinet would be employed as a secretary in any of those countries? Just by bringing in their CV, just by having their reputation. And you saw when vetting was happening, when somebody comes with a 2-page CV and he's supposed to be, I remember at least Kibaki's President Uhuru Kenyatta's cabinet was different. There are some people like the late Professor Magoha, may he rest in peace, who came with a 96-page CV.
Wow.
But the people who were interviewing him were Kawajiko, who had a half-a-page CV.
What can we do as a media or as individuals to get people thinking in the right paths? At 2027, we don't do the same stuff we've been doing consistently.
First and foremost, when I went to vote, there was a BVR kit that was supposed to check whether it is Fanya Mambo who is voting, and I had to put my thumb there. I think the first thing is we abolish that thing. We come up with another one for you to check whether your brain qualifies to be given a voter's card in the first place. Because not everybody who carries a vote in their pocket in this country has got the capacity to understand what we are voting for and why we are voting. And that is the biggest problem we have. People take emotions to the ballot. People take hate and bile and disgrace to the ballot. The ballot is supposed to be a repository of hope, a repository of our dreams, a repository of those things that we think are good for our country. When you go to the ballot in saying, I hate Jeff, I'm going to remove Jeff, I'm going to punish Jeff, that hate you take to the ballot is what you harvest immediately after the elections. But when you take hope and aspirations and dreams and thoughts about a good tomorrow and put them in that box, that's what you begin to harvest the following day. Very many good leaders have offered themselves, but we have voted for the wrong ones and for the wrong reasons.
Sometimes they say you get what you deserve.
I think they get who they are. I think sometimes Kenyans look for the person who looks like them. And they're like, this one looks like us.
So last year looks like us. The mountain.
Yes.
Is it rumbling? Because all of a sudden, this guy, Kiharu MP, Dede, out of the blue, he shows up and looks like he's giving Riggy G a run for his money. And he wouldn't do that unless he was backed by someone. There's got to be a hand behind there.
People of Mount Kenya, me included, we are foolish to have taken that narrative and run with it. The conversation around this time is that there are constituencies where children are being given bursaries for the whole 4 years because their population is low and because there's a lot of money being allocated to them. So there are constituency with 20,000 voters, 30,000 voters is getting 100 million. Where a constituency like Juja with 400,000 is getting 100 million. The conversation in Mount Kenya right now should have been putting KK government on its toes to give us 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling. The conversation should have been that we are underrepresented, that we are getting less resources, that Kiambu with about 1.2 million votes cannot continue getting the amount of money it's getting in CDF. But when the hand that is pushing Dede Nyoro realizes that Mount Kenya will start having that conversation, they are told that the only problem you have is who your deputy president is going to be in 2027, sorry. And then I tell Mount Kenya, how foolish can we possibly be? That it has already been decided for us who the presidential candidate will be, and so we are now fighting for the deputy president's position. Anybody who is having that conversation has been pocketed. So say that we already have a presidential candidate in the person of William Samoei Ruto, so we are fighting for who will be deputy president. Come out of that thinking and have a different kind of thinking. And the different kind of thinking is this, that we do not have a presidential candidate for 2022 as Mount Kenya. 2027. And we are placing a candidate for 2027 for the presidential seat. Anything short of that is lying to Mount Kenya. And Mount Kenya must wake up. Yani munarushiwa tu tumbegu hivi munaanza kuchukua. And you're not even thinking about it. We have thought about it and we are serious. We are having a presidential candidate as Mount Kenya in 2027. This conversation of deputy president is misplaced. It is not our conversation. Dende and Rigiji can have it. They are not the only leaders we have in Mount Kenya.
But does that point to some friction between Rigiji and his boss? Or people in the presidency?
First and foremost, let's not have a conversation about Rigiji. We all agreed that we were not...
But he is a truthful man.
He's a truthful man who has divided this Kenya into shareholders and non-shareholders. Let's not have a conversation about a deputy president who comes and says that some Kenyans are more deserving than others based on how they voted. He's not worth that airtime. I think the conversation we should be having in this country is how never to have such a deputy president in the future. And he's a good example. So that Kenyans will be told, next time you're looking for a deputy presidential candidate, this is how he should not look like. Because some of the reasons why people fail in making decisions is because they do not have a livid example of how something bad looks like. The Rwanda genocide, with a lot of humility, was a bad thing. But in hindsight today, if you go there and you see how skulls have been placed in a museum, it shows you how badly things can get if you don't watch how you behave as a nation. Now we have a deputy president who now becomes a living example of how not to choose a deputy president and how not to have one who behaves like him, and how not to have a person who divides this nation into shareholders and non-shareholders. So let's not have a conversation about him. It is a kakistocratic government. When you choose the wrong people, kakistocracy, yes, when you choose the wrong people to lead government. Now we want to move to meritocracy, and you only choose the best, the most qualified, the most deserving, and give them positions of leadership, and then you see a difference.
Tell me something, Fanya Mambo. Kenya Kwanza sold hope. They sold everything, close to hope during the elections. Very few of those promises have been fulfilled. Let's face it, very few.
I have given an example of a pilot who was supposed to fly people to Dubai. And they allowed pilots to campaign at the airport. And one pilot came and said, I have been a captain for 25 years. I have flown for this number of hours. I will fly you to Dubai, but you'll need to fasten your belts, you'll need to be comfortable, and so on and so forth. Another one came and said, number one, we are going to remove some seats. We are going to have a nyama choma grill in the aeroplane. Number two, we are going to have a DJ. You are going to have all the wine you want, all the alcohol you have. You are allowed to do anything in this plane. In fact, we shall have a pole, you can dance on the pole. Even when we are taking off, you don't need to fasten your seatbelt. Guess what? Kenyans voted for the man who told them that you can have a grill for nyama choma inside the aeroplane. Yeah. And you can fry all the mituras you want. And you can have a party and you can dance on a pole. On some matters, sometimes, it is good to allow that Kenyans do not have a campaign on some matters. If you allowed Kenyans to choose a pilot, and when the pilot took off, just at the runaway, we realized we had a problem. Because they were asking, signal iko pande gani? Reverse gear iko pande gani? Kwani hii ndege haina mafuta ya kutosha? And so the aeroplane has never left. Because they voted for the person who told them you can roast nyama choma inside an aeroplane. And left the captain who told them, I have been a pilot for 25 years. I have 3,000 hours of flying, and so on and so forth. On some matters in this country, we cannot allow people to do campaigns on. Because when you lie to people, and the people buy your lies, and then you get inside and start asking, gia ya ndege iko wapi? Number one inawekewa wapi? Na rivers ni gani? That is where we are.
And yet we constantly keep going back there, voting for that guy with the nyama choma in the plane.
And unfortunately, Kenyans are also very selfish. Because there's a leader who would come and do a road like Mwai Kibaki, but he'll not give you 100 shillings. But because we are so individualistic, so selfish, we only think about my house and what I took to my house. We prefer the guy who gave you 100 shillings to the guy who built a road that helps everybody. And that is why I'm telling Kenyans, tuache kujipenda, tuache tamaa, tuache ulafi. Let's start thinking about this country. And when we start thinking about the country, we start putting the right people in place. And I have told you the example. You cannot be choosing a qualified house girl and a politician who has got only a birth certificate. The problem is you, the voter. You must start choosing the correct people, and you must start saying, now this country is not going to the dogs anymore.
Is that day coming?
Well, sai wanasema kimewaramba.
Kabisa.
It means they understand they made the mistake. And it means they understand that, like, what is this thing we call bursary? MCA akona bursary, MP akona bursary, governor akona bursary, kuna presidential bursary. So many. Google how much money it costs to run, just to run HELB for 1 year. Why don't we abolish all these funny bursaries and take that money and distribute it to all the children in the schools? So that if a child was going to pay 5,000 shillings, their school fees is now 3,000 or 2,500. Let them look for the balance from elsewhere. But you cannot come and make education expensive, and then you look for money to make a politician a demigod. If you come to Dagoretti where I live, people waste a whole day waiting for the MP to come at 2 p.m. and to give them to checks to elfu tatu. You know, dehumanizing our people about something that could have been done in a different way. All they need to do is to amalgamate any nonsense, any rubbish called bursary, and I call it rubbish on national TV because it is rubbish. Abolish all of them. Take that money and distribute it evenly to the schools, and let every child see a significant reduction in their fees. Let the parents fight to look for the rest.